Nuclear Energy, Key to Tomorrow. Produced by WQED for the Educational Radio and Television Center, in cooperation with the Westinghouse Electric Corporation and the Atomic Energy Commission. The subject, training and education for atomic energy. Your host, Dr. Warren F. Witzig, Manager of Reactor Physics, Bettis Atomic Power Division.
Welcome to another discussion on nuclear energy, Key to Tomorrow. In this talk, we're going to deal with people. More specifically, we're going to deal with the education and training of people that play an important role in the field of nuclear energy. In our past discussions, we've talked about nuclear energy in the sense of what is it. We've discussed energy. We've gone in and explored, for example, the new fields of metallurgy that have resulted in the birth of new materials such as zirconium and hafnium in this field of nuclear energy. We've talked about the field of reactor physics and the new concepts that have had to come about in the field of neutron physics in order that we could understand and develop these fields. We've also talked about the application of nuclear energy. But now we want to talk, rather than these technical items in the field, we want to talk about people and how they are trained and educated. What is the best way to accomplish this? Where will these people come from? What roles will they play in the nuclear energy field? To do this, let's explore back just a moment in the previous century. In the last century, the kind of techniques used to develop a basic understanding or a research, if you wish, were somewhat ordinary in our sense today. They were the kinds of things that we found in our homes today very, very often. Such a person, for example, if he were studying how to insulate an electrical conductor in his attic or basement, would be experimenting with various kinds of materials. He would be developing a skill. This is the emphasis that we wish to attach here. And perhaps this person, in finding this new material, it might be, for example, the silk from his wife's slip, perhaps. But in developing this new material, he is educating himself and is training himself. Now, when we see what good does this do? We see how this is applied. Let us take a look at about the turn of the century to a manufacturing facility which is producing electrical equipment. And we can see the fruits of this labor. We can see the fruits of the education and training necessary to insulate an electrical conductor. We can move on closer to us in this century and take a look at more complicated machinery such as the Van de Graaff generator, which was developed in the 30s. This tool required that special education and special training be developed in people to exploit this new kind of a tool. And from simple kinds of experimentation of this nature, we can move into the nuclear area and take a look at a reactor such as the reactor that's in the Brookhaven National Laboratory. And we can see that such a reactor can be used as a tool or an instrument, again, in the education and training of people in various fields. And when we see the use that such education and training can be put, we envision the shipping port reactor on the Ohio River, which is producing useful electrical energy from nuclear energy. We have with us for this talk Dr. Joseph R. Feldmayer. Dr. Feldmayer is a physics manager at the Bettis Atomic Power Division of the Westinghouse Electric Corporation. And Dr. Feldmayer will talk a little bit with us on this subject of training and education. Supposing we go into Dr. Feldmeyer's office. Dr. Feldmeyer, we'd like to talk to you about the education and training of people in the nuclear energy field. But before we go into the details of this education and training, I wonder if you'd tell us just a little bit about how new this field is.
Warren, to give a brief answer of the beginning of atomic energy, I think one would have to say that the field began during World War II and has been expanding rapidly since World War II. But this is only a brief and possibly a misleading answer. I think one must describe as the beginning the basic work that went on in the field of physics and other disciplines much before World War II. I think the first landmark in the beginnings of atomic energy was the discovery of radioactivity by Madame Curie long before the turn of the century. This was followed by other basic discoveries, such as the identity of the neutron, which occurred only 25 years ago. And then in 1942, the development of the first operating nuclear chain reaction at the University of Chicago by Professor Fermi. These were all basic developments. In World War II, this basic knowledge was applied to weapons development, and in the post-war years to the development of reactors for power generation purposes. It's this latter phase that is commonly known as the atomic energy field.
Well, with these kinds of thoughts, Joe, we get the idea that this field is sort of growing, it's ballooning, mushrooming, as it were, requiring a great deal more specialization. How well do our schools provide this kind of specialized training for the people in the field?
Well, this is a very difficult thing, Warren. For the universities to continue to provide the degree of specialization which is required for a person to practice in a new field like atomic energy has become well nigh impossible. However, this isn't new just to atomic energy, but other better known fields have run into the same difficulty of the background of knowledge which a person must have in order to practice professionally has become so great that some way of providing the basic as well as the empirical must be provided. If we look at a field like metallurgy, for example, we see that many, many years ago, the metallurgists, by and large, used simple tools associated with heat treatment of metals and alloys in order to develop knowledge in his field. His field has not only become complex by the tools he uses, but the problems that he must solve, as typified by X-ray machinery, electron microscope, and the vacuum furnace. Other fields like electrical engineering have become more complex in their application. Basically the same, application more expanded. The development of radar, the use of vacuum tubes, and now the replacement of vacuum tubes by transistors. And finally, the development of computers, which is an important development of our time. These are all a concern of the electrical engineer. The mechanical engineer's horizons have grown from the simple to the very complex rocket engines, nuclear reactors, in which he has to study heat transfer and shock and vibration problems. Physics, even within our time, has gone from the very simple apparatus of lenses and prisms to very complex apparatus in order to adequately investigate the field of solar physics, accelerators for nuclear physics, and the complex equipment of reactors. This tends to confuse the issue a little bit about what the field is like, this complicated apparatus, but it is a necessary part of the understanding for a person to perform.
What is the motivation? What produces this growing complexity, basically this growth? What causes this?
Well, I think the growth of technology and the associated complexity is really caused by two factors. There are more people in the world today that are demanding the fruits of technology, and second, our social structure has changed so that we today, by push-button techniques, are demanding more and more of readily available energy. I think the charts, Warren, will demonstrate what I've said in a clearer fashion. If we look at the growth of the world population with time and go back to beginning of the calendar, at about 1 AD, the number of people in the world amounted to a few million. A few centuries ago, this number had grown to about 1 billion. But over this 1,500 or so years of time, the curve looking something like this. The population growth has continued, so even in our day, it is approaching 2 billion, and if the growth continues in this fashion, it will probably reach 3 or 4 billion by 2000 AD. Now, this population growth, in addition, has associated with it the increasing demand for readily available forms of energy. So if we look at the curve of the burn-up of energy versus time, it is similar. And on this arbitrary scale of energy units, that by around 1600, the world had used about 2 of these energy units, accumulating in this fashion. And in recent times, the accumulated use of atomic energy, of energy in general, has gone up like this. And by 2000 AD, it may well rise to 10 or more of these energy units, which will require our looking for a new source of energy beyond that supplied by the fossil fuels.
Well, Joe, if we have a picture of why we need all these people now, it's highly probable that our schools are unable to supply the complete requirement of the industry, and so we must, how shall we say it, convert people from the already established professions and industries. How do these people convert? How well do they make the adjustment?
Well, naturally, at the beginning, Warren, when the field became applied, that was during World War II, there were lots of people who had to transfer their interests from other specialties into the field of atomic energy. This applied to doctors and lawyers and other people who had to be brought in to study the specialized problems that atomic energy created. But beyond the doctors and the lawyers, the technical professions that had to make a direct application had to also markedly change. We might look at a few of these. For example, the field of mechanical engineering has found themselves dealing with a new host of problems. Many years ago, the mechanical engineer considered such things as boiler and heat transfer design, and although he still has these problems, he has some additional ones. In 1932, he was helping in the design of such laboratory apparatus as the cyclotron, and in recent times is concerning himself with the problems concerned with nuclear aircraft development, such as the test apparatus built by the General Electric Company for the Atomic Energy Commission. Electrical engineering has changed markedly from Edison's time when he built the first power station. It's simple indeed as compared to the more recent power stations. The radio telescope is a device which electrical engineering helped create for astronomers. And now he is vitally concerned with the control mechanisms that go into any space satellite.
Well, in all of this change, evolution, perhaps one should say, it seems that the concept of flexibility, or perhaps one should say adaptability, seems to be a key word.
I think that's right, and anyone who is considering preparing himself to participate in one of the scientific or technical fields must recognize that there are both things to accomplish, the basic understanding as well as the literature in the field. This is demonstrated by the fact that a normal university undergraduate program now has laboratory courses in which very complex experiments are performed. After a fellow graduates, he finds himself not necessarily going out into some factory, but going back to school again. And in our own Westinghouse Educational Center, we have a very large program of classwork for the immediate undergraduate. Beyond the undergraduate days, a person may by necessity have to specialize at the university in order to acquire the degree of competence that's necessary to write a thesis. But even here, he has specialized in only a very narrow way, and he may not be at all prepared to immediately join a laboratory such as the Bettis Atomic Power Division and go to work effectively. We recognize that a large degree of self-study is required on the part of a person even trained for the PhD in order to participate in our program, and such time is allowed and provided for.
Well, while this may not be just a new concept on the part of industry, this on-the-job training or additional training after the formal university training, I think it's a very important concept, and we should make quite a point of it.
I think that's right, Warren. It's one that has grown, that the student himself must recognize that for him to decide what he is going to be doing 5 years from now is impossible, because the jobs that he will be asked to do have not yet been conceived today. And likewise, industry recognizes this and are most anxious to have the universities provide the basic and for them to apply or allow time for the specialization.
Well, this is an important point here, too, Joe. There's a noticeable attitude on the part of the college student of today which seems to indicate that he's spending a great deal of time concerning himself with the kind of a position he may obtain after graduation, and perhaps spending a little less time concerning himself about the adequacy of the education he's receiving. Now, provided he achieves a good, sound foundation in his technical field, where does the graduate look for employment?
Well, I think in his undergraduate days and the graduate days as well, he looks at three broad areas. Continued work at a university, primarily in pure science, or work in an applied laboratory, such as an industrial or a government-sponsored laboratory. These are the broad areas to which he looks. He is acquiring the basic knowledge to perform there. The specialized training will come later.
Let's talk a bit about the possibility of a person that has been technically trained becoming involved in the direction of an activity, a development activity, or perhaps we should use the word the management of a given activity.
This is an important thing to discuss, Warren, because many young fellows in preparing to go into a technological field do have interests in management and administration. And yet, the time available to spend on this subject during their undergraduate or their graduate days is practically non-existent. However, there is an answer to this, and I think it is a good and a satisfactory answer. That if a person prepares himself to participate individually in a technical program by his training in his undergraduate days and in his graduate work, and then goes to a laboratory to do either pure or applied research and participates individually, he then also has the opportunity, by self-study and by practice, to learn the requirements of an administrator. And technical administration is important, particularly in the applied field, where it is necessary to have large groups of people working closely together on a tightly coordinated program in order to accomplish an end result efficiently. As far as training goes, however, I believe this can come by on-the-job practice, coupled with inherent ability of the individual, his own self-study, and his preparation, so that he learns to deal with personnel problems, industrial relations problems, and the like, and does become a successful administrator, having only been trained by technical coursework at a university. This is not always the case, but many successful people, such as Professor Oppenheimer, have been developed by this course.
We've talked a lot about industry now, Joe, and the need for turning out new materials, new equipment, new power sources, in also new skills in people. Now, all of this has to do quite a bit with the hardware aspects of it, that is, the new material, the new equipment. What can we say about those men and women who are concerned with pure research? Shall we define it as not necessarily being attached to a piece of hardware? What can we say about these people?
It's important to stress this, Warren, because many times the role of the pure scientist and the laboratory for pure research is neglected as far as sponsorship is concerned. But it's extremely important that this not be forgotten. And at the same time, I think a student in his preparation must look towards participating in either field, pure or applied, depending upon his abilities and his motivations. Maybe just a word about a major difference between pure and applied, and that rests with this motivation. Pure science or technology is pursued for the very simple reason of gaining knowledge. Applied technology is pursued for the reason of accomplishing some end objective, like a piece of apparatus, a nuclear aircraft or a missile. Some people have practiced in one of these areas only, such as Professor Einstein, who was very effective as a pure researcher and worked almost entirely alone. Professor Oppenheimer, on the other hand, during the war worked in the applied field of the development of nuclear weapons. But since that time has devoted his entire effort to pure research as director of the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, New Jersey. Professor Oppenheimer is an excellent example of a person who has performed successfully in both areas.
Well, it seems evident then, Joe, that regardless of the plans of industry for continuing the training of the college graduate or for the opportunities to conduct advanced studies in one of the institutes in our country, the basic responsibility for providing men and women with a fundamental education, a basically sound education, rests with the university at the graduate and perhaps the undergraduate level.
Yes, I think it does, Warren. It rests with both. At the undergraduate level, certainly, is where one must concentrate almost entirely upon the basic subjects. When you get into the graduate work, a degree of specialization is required in order that a person demonstrate competence of working in an area that's entirely new. Nevertheless, it is recognized that the university training cannot, and I believe should not, attempt to give specialization. Industry has recognized their obligation, government laboratories as well, to provide the opportunity and the means for getting this specialization. Not only is this something that they have accepted, but they recognize it as a reasonable split and provides for them an advantage in flexibility, which specialization too intimately mixed with the basic at the expense of the basic does not provide. In preparing oneself to participate in the field of atomic energy, one must be very sensitive to this flexibility, because the needs of today may not be the needs of tomorrow, and he must be prepared for this ever-changing horizon.
Well, Dr. Fultmeyer, we'd like to thank you for talking with us in the field of the training and education of these people. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Warren.
As you can see from Dr. Fultmeyer's discussion, there is a very real need produced by our expanding population and our expanding requirements for energy. There is a very real need for additional training and additional education in this expanding technology. Because of this expanding population and increased need for energy, we have the expanding technology and hence the need for special education and training. If we were to establish how this is to come about, we might summarize our discussion as saying that the university, in its role, will supply a basic foundation, a technical foundation, upon which to build a specialty in any of the fields that we wish to use in this nuclear game. In addition, the university should supply a liberal education. The scientist or the technical person, the engineer, must certainly be as good a citizen in his community as anyone else in the community. And he must really use this liberal education to satisfy the needs of the community. Then the industry and governmental laboratories will build upon the foundation supplied by the university, the specialty, by training in industry, by training in the laboratories, as we've discussed with Dr. Fultmeyer. In addition, the industry and government laboratories will also provide the education required for technical direction. And so we see this team of the university and industry supplying the skills and need for the nuclear energy field. I'd like to say goodbye to you and thank you for coming to this discussion.
Nuclear Energy, Key to Tomorrow. Produced by WQED for the Educational Radio and Television Center, in cooperation with the Westinghouse Electric Corporation and the Atomic Energy Commission. The subject, Training and Education for Atomic Energy. Your host, Dr. Warren F. Witzig. Special guest, Dr. Joseph R. Feldmeyer, Physics Manager, Bettis Atomic Power Division, Westinghouse Electric Corporation. Technical Advisor for the series, Mr. Edward R. Sanford. Engineering supervision by Frank Stuckman and Stephen Zorbas. Production and direction for the series by John W. Ziegler and Robert E. Potts. This is National Educational Television.